Hello everyone. Once again, welcome back to my channel Uday's English Academy. Today, in this video, we'll discuss about a lesson called Everything I Need to Know I Learnt in the Forest, written by Vandana Shiva. Let's have some brief discussion about Vandana Shiva. Vandana Shiva born in 1952. She was born in the valley of Dehradun and spent her school and college days in the Himalayan region. This lesson is based on two articles written by Vandana Shiva. In the first part, we see Everything I Need to Know I Learnt in the Forest was published in the winter issue of Yes magazine in 2012. The title of the winter issue was What Would Nature Do? The second part, titled Right of Nature on the Global Stage, was adopted by the author from her own article Forest and Freedom, which was published in the June 2011 edition of Resurgence magazine. In the first part, the author tells a reader how she learned the basic principles of environmentalism from the uneducated women of Garhwal, Himalaya, how she became a proactive environmentalist. And in the second part, we see historical account of how the concept of earth as a living entity got transformed to earth as a dead matter and its consequences. The whole lesson talks about environment concepts like biodiversity, earth as a living organism, earth democracy, and ecological sustainability, etc. In the first part, in the lesson, we see biography of Vandana Shiva. Who is Vandana Shiva, which place she has come from, who are her parents. And second one, we see Chipko movement, how Vandana Shiva involved in the Chipko movement, and the Bachini Devi's incident, who was very close to Vandana Shiva. And the last one, we see Navdanya form. In the first part, we see. And in the second part, we see rights of nature on the global stage. What is the meaning of this? How many people are involved into this? Actually, there are three people. One is Cormac Cullinan, Francis Bacon, and Caroline Merchant. And afterward, we see, as per the one topic called Vandana Shiva's topic, what nature teaches us. And the last one, we see the poetry of the forest. So, let's begin the lesson which is prescribed for PUC second year. In the first part of the lesson, the writer, that is Vandana Shiva, says that her study of ecology started in the forests of Himalaya because her father was a forest conservator and mother was a farmer. She used to compose songs and poems about trees, forest, and India's forest of civilization. Vandana Shiva earlier belonged to, before the independence, she belonged to Pakistan. So after the division, she came to India. So this is about her self-introduction, what we are talking about in the form of biography. In the next paragraph, we see Chipko movement. Chipko movement was a non-violent response to the large-scale deforestation that was taking place in the Himalayan region in the 1970s. Vandana Shiva tells us that her involvement in the contemporary ecology movement began with the Chipko movement. During this period, the peasant women from Garhwal, Himalaya had come out in defense of the forest, protesting against the ruthless cutting down of trees on large scale for loggings. This had resulted in landslide, floods, scarcity of water, fodder, and fuel because women were dependent on these many things. If they don't have food, if they don't have water, if they don't have fodder means food for the animals. It was difficult for them to live. Consequently, women had become the worst sufferers because they were in charge of fulfilling the daily requirements for cooking, washing, and other household chores. They had to walk longer distances for collecting water and firewood, which was a heavy burden. Fortunately, the women were quite aware of the real value of the forest. They had realized that the forests were real source of springs and streams, food for their cattle and fuel for their hearths. Hearth meaning is in Hindi we say chula. So because of this, the women declared that they would hug the trees and the loggers would have to kill them before killing the trees. The author recalls a folk song of the period which told them that the beautiful oaks and rodents gave them cool water. So this is there in the second paragraph in the lesson. In the third paragraph, we see that author informs us in 1973 she went to the Himalaya to visit her favorite forest and swim in her favorite stream. She wanted to see these spots before leaving for Canada to do her PhD, but the forests were gone there and streams had become a trickle. It was at this moment that she decided to become a volunteer for the Chipko movement. She recounts later on how she spent her vacation doing padyatras, documenting the deforestation, the work of the forest activist, and the spreading the message of Chipko. In the next paragraph, we see Chipko movement. In Chipko movement, there is one incident which relates to Bachini Devi, and this incident took place in 1997 in a village of Advani. So she recalls how a village woman named Bachini Devi led a movement of resistance against her own husband who had obtained a contract to cut trees. When the logging officials arrived at the forest, the women held up lighted lanterns although it was broad daylight. When the forester asked them to explain why they were doing so, the women replied that they had come there to teach them forestry. The forester admonished them, saying that they were foolish women and did not know the value of the forest. He added that forest produced profit, resin and timber, but the women sang back in chorus, replying that the forests bear soil, water, and pure air, also sustain the earth and look after so many things which belong to a common man. In the next paragraph, we see the monoculture of the minds. Beyond monoculture, Vandana Shiva tells the reader she learned about biodiversity and biodiversity based living economies from Chipko movement. Since then, protecting both biodiversity and biodiversity based economies has become her life's mission. Further, she remarks that as she had described in her book, Monocultures of the Mind, our failure to understand biodiversity and its many functions is the root cause of impoverishment of nature and culture. Then she says that lessons she learned about diversity in the Himalayan forest, she transformed to the protection of biodiversity on her farms. She started saving seeds from farmers' fields, incidentally realized that they needed a farm for demonstration and training. This led to the establishment of Navdanya farm, which was started in the Dur Valley located in the lower elevation Himalaya region of Uttarakhand province. There, she conserved and grew 630 varieties of rice, 150 varieties of wheat, and hundreds of other species. She proudly says that they practice and promote a biodiversity intensive form of farming that produce more food and nutrition per acre. She finally observes that the conservation of biodiversity is therefore the answer to the food and nutrition crisis being faced in our country. In the final part of the lesson, she tells the reader that Navdanya movement and biodiversity, conservation and organic farming she started in 1987 is spreading gradually. She reports that so far they have worked with farmers to set up more than 100 community seed banks across India and have saved more than 3,000 rice varieties. The Navdanya organization helps farmers make a transition from fossil fuel and chemical based monocultures to biodiverse ecological systems nourished by the sun and the soil. She concludes saying that biodiversity has been her teacher of abundance and freedom, of cooperation and mutual giving. Now we will discuss in the second part what she is talking about. As I told you, in the second part we are going to discuss the rights of nature on the global stage. And in the first section of this article, she suggests that we accept nature as a teacher, and then we do so because we co-create with her and also recognize her agency and rights. Incidentally, she informs the reader that Ecuador has recognized the rights of nature in its constitution and calls it significantly a step. Ecuador is a country, is a small country now. So Ecuador is a small country. This country recognizes the rights of nature. It means the nature also has its own rights. And this was come to know by the United Nations General Assembly. And based on this, they have organized a conference on harmony with nature as a part of day celebration in April 2011. This conference was inspired by the Constitution of Ecuador, and because of this, they have declared all over the world that every country should celebrate Environment Day. And this started from 2011. So from here, Bolivia also started copying Ecuador. Bolivia is type of country, a small country like Ecuador. Vandana Shiva reports that much of the discussion, whatever they discussed in the United Nations General Assembly, most of the discussion in the conference centered ways to transform system based on domination of people over nature, men over men, rich over poor, into new systems based on partnership. It means how men dominates women. Similarly, everybody collectively dominating the nature. So this should be banned, this should be stopped. Next, she opines that separatism is indeed the root of disharmony with nature and violence against nature and people. The author supports her statement, citing the opinion of Cormac Cullinan, a prominent South African environmentalist. According to him, apartheid means separateness. Because separatism, and this word apartheid connecting to separatism, where once upon a time in Africa practiced by the white people against the black people. So nowadays in the modern world, human being considering earth as a dead matter, and they are the white people, so they have the right to do however they can use the nature. So according to him, apartheid means separateness. The author says that the whole world joined the anti-apartheid movement in order to end the violent separation of people on the basis of color. Now that apartheid in South Africa has been put behind us, we need to overcome the wider and deeper apartheid and eco-apartheid based on the illusion of separateness of humans from the nature in our minds and lives. In the next paragraph, author makes an attempt to trace the origin of idea of separateness. The author recalls our beliefs about the earth in the pre-industrial era, when man believed that living beings were an inseparable part of nature. But later, with the advent of scientific thinking, man came under the illusion that living earth was dead matter and there was no connection between the living earth and the other living creatures. Vandana Shiva remarks that it was at that moment in history war against the earth began. She observes that seeds of separateness were sown when the living earth was considered as dead matter to facilitate industrial revolution. She adds here that monoculture replaced biodiversity. Terra madre and terra nullius. Terra nullius means empty land. Terra madre means the land which is ready to occupy, which is ready for the occupation. The person who propounded this philosophy was Francis Bacon, who was called the father of modern science. Francis Bacon asserted that science and inventions result do not merely exert a gentle guidance over the nature. It means as long as science and inventions available, human beings start dominating the nature. There is no doubt and there is no question about it. So because science and invention helping the human being. Next, she says, one more scientist, one more philosopher called Caroline Merchant. Caroline Merchant says, exploitation of nature, people have been doing, and they are digging the Mother Earth. They are going to the entrails for getting gold and mutilating her body as observed by the merchant. So he says that as long as consumerism won't stop, people start digging the earth. They start slaying the mother and they do whatever they want for their own selfishness. They will do whatever they want for their own benefits. It is to be inferred here that on Francis Bacon popularized the idea that the earth can serve as a source of raw materials for scientific experiments. Many new scientific discoveries and inventions were made, which later led to the exploitation of iron, gold, copper, wood, and metals from the earth, and healed the industrial revolution, modernization, growth of cities, increase in the number of rich people, and urban culture displacing other cultures. In the next section, we see what nature teaches us. Vandana Shiva tells what we need to know. She says that we are facing multiple crises which are intensified by globalization, and hence we need to move away from the paradigm of nature as dead matter and move towards an ecological paradigm. Vandana Shiva tells us that to understand what an ecological paradigm means, we need to go to nature herself, and nature is the best teacher. Next, she presents about Earth University, which the author says is located at Navdanya, a biodiversity farm. She says that idea of Earth University teaches Earth democracy. According to the author, the concept of Earth democracy symbolizes freedom for all species to evolve within the web of life. It also refers to the freedom and responsibility of human as members of Earth family to recognize, protect, and respect the rights of other species. Earth democracy, she says, Earth democracy is a shift from anthropocentrism to ecocentrism. Anthropocentrism is a school of thoughts which argues that humans are the central element of universe. Now we need to accept that ecosystems are the main elements of the universe and not the man. And the earth nurtures diverse ecosystems. It also means that it is man's responsibility to preserve these ecosystems. Since we all depend on earth for our survival, Earth democracy gives every human being rights to food, water, freedom, hunger, and thirst. And in the next paragraph, she mentions activities that Navdanya. She says that is a biodiversity farm where participants learn to work with living seeds, living soil, and other web of life. Living seeds and living soils, other web of life. The participants include farmers, school children, people from across the world. She mentions two most popular courses offered at Navdanya. They are A to Z of organic farming and agroecology, Gandhi and globalization. And now we have come to the last section, that is poetry of the forest. Here, Vandana Shiva talks about original source of the ideas of the Earth University. She states the concept of Earth University originated from Rabindranath Tagore. Rabindranath Tagore started school in West Bengal called Shanti Niketan. Incidentally, Vandana Shiva gives us brief introduction to Rabindranath Tagore, who is a national poet and Nobel laureate. She informs the reader that Tagore started a learning center in Shantiniketan in West Bengal as a forest school. His intention was to take inspiration from nature and to create an Indian cultural renaissance. The school became a university in 1921, growing into one of the India's most famous centers of learning. Vandana takes this forest school as a model and tells the reader that just as in Tagore's time, we need to turn to nature and the forest for lessons in freedom. She refers to Tagore's essay Tapovan. Tapovan is a poem written by Rabindranath Tagore in which Tagore expressed his understanding of Indian civilization. Tagore states that Indian civilization has been special, has been distinctive in locating its source of regeneration because the material and the intellectual formation of human being has come from the forest but not from the city. Tagore asserts that India's best ideas have come from where man was in communion with the trees, rivers, lakes, and away from the crowds, but not from the cities. He adds that peace of the forest has helped the intellectual evolution of man. Peace of the forest. Today, if you look up so many people in the form of tour, in the form of picnic, they go to the peaceful areas like Shimla, Ooty and all. So that's why Rabindranath Tagore has mentioned in this poem, the peace of the forest has helped the culture of the man. Furthermore, he says that the culture that has arisen from the forest has been influenced by the diverse process of renewal of life, and these processes of renewal of life are always at play in the forest, varying from season to season, sight, sound, and the smell. Whatever we have today, it's a civilization or it's a culture, how to do agriculture or how to cook, how to live in a society. All these things have been learnt or cultivated from the olden civilizations. So this is how we see in the poetry of the forest. Okay, my dear students, so this is the end of your lesson.